Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. The link is in the show notes. I'm happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it. And that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I'll be your host once again for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. On the show this week, I've got Donnie Sanford joining me. Donnie's been on the show before. He works in the parts industry, and he's recently made a transition from owning his own store to managing a store and working for someone else. And that's going to be the topic of our discussion today, is some of the pros and cons of both working for yourself, owning a business, entrepreneurship, because we talk about that a lot on the show, right? And I'm sort of biased that direction because that's what I've done. But also the other side of it is working for someone else, working for a company, being an employee. What are the benefits to that? What are the reasons you might go that direction or stay in that place versus running your own show, right? And it's good to talk about the other side of things. Since I mentioned, I talk a lot about the doing your own thing, but there is a right time and place for both. So that'll be the focus of our discussion. We're also going to talk about some key stuff, but always good to get to talk to Donnie. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the episode. All right. Good evening, Donnie. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
I cannot complain. Really busy. Actually, this morning was interesting because we had nothing on the schedule. Like when we got up today, there was nothing, which was very odd. We haven't had that. I don't even remember the last time we've had that. And so it's kind of nice though. I told Steve, I was like, oh, just hang out at home. We'll give you a call if something comes in. And it was just a nice leisurely morning. I went to the bank and got some stuff handled, got a few other things handled, and then everybody called all at once and said, so then we were like booked out a day and a half. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, what were all of you people doing yesterday? But I'll take it, I guess, however it comes.
That's awesome. Yes, you're right. It always comes in waves. Like at the parts store, we'll sit there and it's like quiet, and it'll trick you because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start this project of like some cleaning up or something back there, and then I swear to God, they get together and they're like, all right, us three are going to rush the counter. You two call on the phones. It's like it always happens in big waves all at once. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how certain jobs or certain things will come in waves too. And I've experienced that my entire career in the automotive field, where you'll
Yeah.
just get 3 or 4 of the same thing.
Yep.
And it's not, I'm not working in a dealership either, I'm
Yeah.
in the independent world seeing all makes and models. And then all of a sudden I get, 3 or 4 of the same make with the same problem. And the programming is no different, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there'll be a stretch where all we were doing was the TCMs and what are they? The Ford Focuses and the Fiestas and stuff like that. It's just like every other call was one of those. And then I think it was parts driven on that one, but then we wouldn't see any for a really long time. And then there'd be another big wave. And I think it was just when they could actually get modules. Um,
Are those bad? Because I had in the height of the back order, I had one and I had to send it to down that shop down in Texas to get rebuilt. Like, it was the only one I could find. They were the little Ford Fiestas underneath the battery,
yep.
the transmission control module.
Yep.
Yeah. Are they back in supply now?
I am not sure. I don't know. I know they had just an insane back order, but I
I
haven't been
remember.
doing as much of them recently.
I think I called you and was like, "Do you know anything on these?" I said, "The only place I'm seeing is eBay." And you said, "If you get one from eBay, get 5. You're gonna need."
Yeah, those are so bad. Well, number one, they didn't differentiate between Fiesta or Focus because they look the same. They bolt up, they plug in, and they will actually work. But you got to do some trickery to get it to happen. But if you get a Focus in a Fiesta or a Fiesta in a Focus, it won't work. There'll be no comm between the cluster and the TCM, and you won't be able to program it. It'll just boot you out. But the other thing, even if you did get the right one, it's whether it communicated. And then I had one where I was actually cloning him on the bench, so I was like plugged into the module on the bench, and all I did was like hook power and ground up to it, and the programming device like turns it on. Like a little puff of smoke just came out of the connector when it turned on. And I double checked my connections because I was like, did I screw something up? I'm like, no, this is how it's supposed to be hooked up. And then as soon as I saw that, I ripped my connections out of the thing. And yeah, so those Chinesium ones left a little bit to be desired, I
That's
guess.
gotta be that had to be the worst feeling in the world. To see a little smoke coming out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad I didn't buy it, and just I tell all these shops, hey, you're gonna do, eBay, Amazon. It's a roll of the dice.
It is.
Like for me, people trying to provide their own keys seems to be one of the worst too.
I don't. If somebody brings their own keys, I won't do them. I
Yep.
just.
No. Well, I tell people, hey, I'm going to come out and we will attempt it, but I'm charging you full price if your key does not work. Right. And it's nothing to do with us.
You know,
And that happens because I got burned on it too many times.
yeah.
And so I tell them, hey, I guarantee you my keys will work. And if they don't, I'm not going to charge you anything. Um, and there's, warranty on them. I know where they came from, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, people buy them off of Amazon.
Now,
And
is that for shops or is that for or is that's not even walk out like walk in like regular on the street people?
so I key work is tricky because I try to keep it to business only, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to only do it through shops. Well, of course, invariably your number gets out there. Hey,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
especially in like an all keys lost situation, because that is good money.
That is.
And so that's usually where it is, where people are, providing their own keys, or if a shop has called me in for a customer job, yeah,
Yeah.
they want to supply their Amazon keys for it or whatever. And this, like, if you're trying to do a Nissan, those stupid Nissan keys, every single one looks the same, but like,
Yeah.
it seems every single vehicle has a different FCC ID on those things. And I've been beat up with that. I'm like, I have a freaking stack full of these Nissan keys, and it seems like every time I get one, I'm like, I don't have that one. What the heck? Like, none of these will work.
Oh, the FCC ID. I'm working on it. I want to be able to figure that out.
Dude, if there was a device, if anybody out there listening knows of such a thing, I can't find it, that would pick up a signal from a key from any remote that's broadcasting,
Right?
electromagnetic wave, and come back and give you an FCC ID. that would be the coolest freaking thing in the world. I would go buy one right now. Click. So send me a link if you got one, but I haven't been able to find one. You can tell the frequency, but that's where I run into a problem. Is the key will have the same frequency, but it's a different FCC ID, and so the car
Yes.
just doesn't
So
observe it, right?
I've got a customer that we go out to. He's insanely smart. I mean, I wish like next time when you visit, I wish you come here. This is one of the guys he's one of those guys that you walk in next to him and he starts talking and you start feeling smarter about stuff, or you start feeling stupider, however you want to look at it. He started out his career at our local GM, did it for years. He was their drivability, but he is so good with electronics. Then he's on his own. His shop is out in the sticks, and he does a lot of hot rodding, rebuilding. He does rebuilding hot rods for people. He does the dealerships bring him things like when somebody can't figure it out, they bring it out to him. But now he's kind of gotten on a thing now. I can't really talk about too much. They got it under wraps. Like I go out there, I have to let them know I'm coming. Whether stuff's in the shop I can see or not, and they got a new battery that they've created, and he's in on it. I mean, I was back to where I was going before I went down that rabbit hole. I was talking to him about that, and I was like, man, how can I do this? And he got onto a long thing about, well, the body going through the body control or the ECU is where that signal goes. And we were hashing that out, and that would be the thing. He said, but it's going to be in the stream, and then the FCC ID is on a national register, and that's about as far as we got.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if we could figure this out, it would be. I wouldn't have so many keys stacked up.
Well, it's yeah, that I have a lot of keys in stock because I ordered the wrong one, or I couldn't figure out which one the car needed ahead of time, so I just ordered both. And so then I've got the one that didn't work. Now that one's in stock, and I'll probably never use it because it'll be some like Japanese made thing that doesn't come to the States or something like that. Kia and Hyundai are terrible.
Yeah.
They seem to have multiple options for every single one of their vehicles, and even using RepairLink and stuff like that, I've had a tough time. I actually had the dealership sell a customer the wrong keys, FCC wise, right? Frequency was the same, the physical key was the same, but I could not get the remote programmed in. But I could program the old one in. This again was a customer supplied key, but they're like, yeah, we're buying it from Kia, and couldn't get it to work, but the old one would. I'm like, it's got to be this key. So I ended up, searching and thinking around, and I'm like, this is the other key that they list. Tell them you need this part number. They did, came back, it worked fine. And so obviously the car can identify the FCC ID, right? I don't pretend to know exactly how it works within the structure of the message. Maybe that's step one into figuring this out. But obviously the car can make that determination because those two Kia keys, I think they were both 315 for the frequency.
Yep.
The frequency the same, but something within that message is different in regards to the FCC ID, that number that you see on the back. So what is that? It must be readable somehow. Can you translate it from a message? I don't know.
I was looking at, and I could be wrong. So, please, somebody on this, let us know. Like, I believe, right? So you have the RFID is the signal. Now your FCC gives the instructions. So like if you were to think about it like Morse code, it'd be like dot dot dash or dash dash dot is what that's doing. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I've been trying to unlock this mystery because it aggravates me and it wastes me.
Yeah.
It wastes a lot of time. And you look so silly. You're like, oh, I'm not locking doors.
It was one of the surprising challenges for me getting into keys, right? Like the cutting of them, I actually was surprised by how quickly I was able to pick that up. Now, I think the technology involved in today's machines is a big part of that. Not me, but that's like the stuff that's out there right now. You can figure out how to cut keys pretty dang quick. But it's that's that little stuff that's hung me up and been a sticking point. And yeah, getting the right keys because they have multiple options for one. But yeah, if anybody out there is listening to this podcast and you know somebody who's an expert on even just like radio frequencies, I would be I would love to have somebody on the show that like
Yeah.
really knows that stuff well or has a lot of experience in it. Because I actually find it really interesting. Just the
Me
fact that you
too.
can press a button on a key and a little 3-volt battery sends out an electromagnetic wave like at the speed of light to your car, and then it responds to it. And like that to me is pretty crazy
It
that
is.
just works.
And it deciphers it. It can know the difference between all the
Yeah.
one. Yeah, yeah. And like just well, and it's neat. Just I even get fascinated with how the chip works. You know, with it going in and the coil, and that's what gives its energy to fire back. You know, like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah,
know,
and then the anti-theft portion of it too. Obviously, there's a steep learning curve there. I know you've been doing a ton of keys lately, and it's just like every new car is a new challenge in some way or another to do these keys.
I had three to do today, and one was that Ford truck. It didn't work out. I was telling you about earlier. A customer came to me, and it had I believe to be an ECU problem, and then they took it to them. They called me, and then the other one's just a Honda Odyssey. I knocked out pretty easy, but yeah, it. But the keys is it keeps you. That's I think it's why I kind of like it. Is it you got to really use your brain sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or know some smart people that can help you out for sure.
Uh,
That's been my move.
no,
Um,
I'm always calling you. Of course, hey, my calls have gotten less and less. I think I'm getting a little better.
yeah. um,
Oh man, that time I called you when that guy had shoved them wires in the ODD, and it was crazy. You're like, put me on FaceTime me. Let me see what.
yeah, I do that with my employees sometimes. I'm just like, it'd be easier if I could just see what you're doing.
Oh man, yeah. But yeah, the key's been going good. You can keep leashy. I haven't. You know, when we took that class, I bought one. I got kind of motivated. I got to where I could do it, but oh, it's such a. I don't know. That's not really my jam.
Yeah, it's I enjoy it because it's kind of like a puzzle. But I was on a Toyota a couple weeks ago where it's all keys lost, and it's $20 to get the key code legit, through NASTIF. And yeah, you got to file some paperwork, but what does that take you? 5 minutes once you have the information. And I already do have the information. If I'm doing an all keys lost, I'm getting all that stuff anyways, because I'm not going to help people steal cars. So what's $20 to just have the code, especially now the temperature's dropping in Minnesota. I'm
Yeah.
pretty much strictly a codesmith once the temperature gets below freezing, because doing leashy when you can't feel your fingertips is not fun.
Time is money, and
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
if I had it down to the science and I could just go up there and feel so confident that I could just do it, it would be a different story for me. I know it takes hours that I don't have. I would rather do something like I like to play with. That's what I was showing you here on the table with the electronics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would rather use that time that way.
Yep. Yep. I know. I totally understand it. In a situation where locks have been changed, that is one point where it's nice to be able to do that. And I've run into that a couple times. Luckily, not a whole lot, but the Kias and Hyundais, again, is an example where that happens quite often, actually,
Yeah.
because these things are stolen so often. So they're changing over lock cylinders and things like that. And so you can get that cut code fairly easy for one of those, but it's not going to work because they changed it over. So what do you do now? And I actually did find, what was that on? It was a newer Kia. And these things are so unsecure. You can leashy the or the ignition lock cylinder.
I've
Like
heard that.
most cars, you can't do that. There's the sidebar or whatever, so you can't do the ignition. I leashy the ignition in this thing.
That's crazy. Something, and I didn't, right? That's the keys are the ones you could use the USB drive and make them
Oh,
start. Is that the ones?
I that's very
Somebody,
possible. I haven't seen that.
somebody was saying something. Somebody was telling me that about them that you could use a USB. I don't know. I was like, hmm, it's kind of crazy. I had a Scion today that nothing like because I got a little app on my phone and the key didn't look like anything like what the customer had. And I went to UHS, I went to Transponder Island, I went to a couple different, and none of the keys looked right to what the
Hmm.
customer had. Um, I told him, I was like,
Maybe
no.
some aftermarket key or something.
Oh, that's what I said. But he said that was the factory key he got. I
Hmm.
was like, I'm probably just gonna take one of my generics. I got the blade, and I'm just gonna take one of the generics up there and make it. But it was wildly. There's probably something. He gave me the VIN, but Repair Link wasn't very much help on that one.
Hmm. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes calling the dealer actually has been
Yeah.
pretty helpful for finding out, part numbers and stuff like that. Um, and I do use websites like UHS all the time just to see what key do I need.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't even need an account. You can go on there and search, and I'd say 95% of the time they're pretty accurate as far as the options go
Mm-hmm.
and what you might need, the part numbers, the FCC, all that stuff. So yeah, it's actually a pretty good resource. Even if you don't order any keys from them, it's really
Yeah.
good information if you're trying to figure that stuff out.
That's the key, is figuring out the right info for the what the key is, what it goes for the car, what it's supposed to have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even with one car, you can have so many different options for a particular key. It's like, is it a push button start or is it not a push button start? What's the button configuration? FCC ID, frequency, blah, 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 blah. And so a lot of times I have my guy doing the phones. I'm like, just have them take a picture of the key and text it to you, so you have you can see the physical key. Here's the buttons it has, here's the configuration, and that way we can't mess it up. Because that's another one where you can make a key, you can do everything right, it's all great, but the buttons aren't the same as the one that they had or have. They're
Yeah.
not happy and they don't want to
No.
pay that
Yep.
fee. Even if it's too many buttons, right? Like you can say, oh, I'm just going to get the one with all the buttons and then I'm covered no matter what. And they don't like that. So I don't know, you can take a little like acetone and
See,
wipe off the white part, but
when we took that class, I always get that one. I take some acetone and wipe it off. But that's exactly what happens. If it ain't exactly right, like it's like, I'm not paying. What's going on? What's this button do? It's like, well, it's
yeah. I have a remote start now. It doesn't work. What the hell? Yeah. Yep. So you've made some changes in what, over the last 6 months to a year.
August 1 was the date we switched. Yep.
Okay. Maybe we start with that if you want to just kind of share with the listeners. You were on the podcast. I don't know, how long ago was that? That was over a year ago.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. It
Oh
was.
yeah, probably even more. Anyways, you had originally come on and we were talking about parts because you owned CarQuest, right?
I owned a CarQuest Auto Parts store. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's happened since then and where are you at now?
Oh man. So yeah, so we came on and we talked to the relationships between the parts and the shops, right? And how we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a business owner, which, like I always do. When you were talking about going from teaching to doing, I was telling you, hey, like, working for yourself, I've always thought that's the way to go. And I'll say this, you're kind of to blame. I was at Vision, doing some tool training, and
Yeah.
I ran into one of the guys from Napa, at the corporate, and we were just, well, it also started, I was in, because while I was there for the key, I had some like time, so I took a couple other classes just to do. I took the one with Scott Schotten, and then I took another misfire class, and it was like just happened to be the one that I was sitting next to a guy that was a Napa Auto, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a Napa Auto Care," So I'm talking to him, and he was telling me about it, and just had a really good feeling about it, and I was like, huh. And some of the things I was, talking about, some of the things I've been struggling with, and then another class, I sat next to another shop, and they were Napa Auto Cares, and and I was like, huh. And really it came down to me, and I'd been trying to grow. In this business, you've got to be. I was a single store, and I wanted to be a multi-store, right? So like I wanted to,
Okay.
because kind of the way parts work is, like you guys know, you have to have a lot of stuff. So you have to, and you can do that if you have multiple stores. It's easier. You can stage things, you can spread things out. So you have one thing here. If you have it over here, also, you don't have to wait for it. You can get it from your other store. There's a lot of things you can do,
Sure.
and just trying to go. I'd worked with another Carquest had worked with me on taking over another store. It didn't work out, and it didn't go well with me and that owner. Like, feel he kind of went back on me. He shook my hand that he was going to sell to me, and didn't. And then we were going to do another the corporate store. They talked about letting us do that, and then COVID hit, and that didn't really work out. And I was like, and I was stuck, right, just stuck in between these two stores. Like, so I went 12 miles this way. We would argue over territory. If I went 12 miles another way, we'd argue over territory. Absolutely was frustrating me. And
Yeah.
but all in all, my store was doing good, very successful. Was really, like I said, if you'd have asked me 8 months ago, 7 months ago, I would have said no way. There's no way I wouldn't be sitting here wearing a Napa shirt, and not owning my business. And I even said it on your first podcast. I mean, I'm not. I even said I don't ever like bash another brand. We sell probably 80 to 90% of the same stuff. Now, some product lines do, between your rotating electricals and things like that, they are different, right? But a lot of times those things, brake lines jump from brand to brand a lot. A lot of things do. So you do a disservice by really bashing another brand. It's always the people, and people buy parts from people usually, mostly.
Right.
So talking with Napa, to get back to my story, they had a plan to get me a couple stores, and then the guy's name is Bill Hayes, great guy. I hit it off with him. Like, he took me to lunch, was talking to me, and he just kind of was like, "Have you ever thought about selling?" Because I had mentioned those things about, because they had a plan. He said, "We can get you some more stores if you want," but he said, "Have you ever thought about selling?" Just kind of threw it out there. And because we talked about, there is a multi-store owners that are in my area, and they own a majority of the ones around. And I said, I didn't in that same boat. And he said, "Have you thought about it?" And I said, "Man, everything's for sale, right?" And so, but I didn't think really that much about it. But Bill kind of like, just sit down and talk to him, like, because you're gonna. And he put me in touch with them, and it's Miller Auto Supply, and just talking to him on the phone, he's like really good to talk to. We went and had lunch, and we kind of had a lot of the same like thinking business wise. And really it came down to, I really felt like I don't know, I felt like, man, what a good organization. So we were, I'd never sold a business before either. So that was kind of an exciting deal. Like, we kind of worked out terms. They were really easy. They were really great to work with. In this business, like, it isn't like one of those things where you like, I'm fascinated with business too. I love like business and all things about it. And that was another thing that was kind of fascinating for me, actually going through that process of selling the business. It's not like where you think like, well, I got, last year we did 1.3 million in sales. So take that times three is what things do. A lot of this business is your equity you put in your parts. And that's where, and, I know some part store owners, and that's the way it goes. I met a really good guy at one of our conventions, and he'd had his stores for years, and that's what transferring it over to his children. They were going to buy all the parts off of them and all that. It's an asset based,
Okay.
because any other store could pop up, get a storefront they can roll in and do. I feel, and they made me a really fair offer. I mean, they made me an extremely fair offer. It wasn't like, I still got to work. I mean, it wasn't like that kind of crazy. It was a really fair offer. And, wanted to keep me on. And it's been, I will say, like, it hasn't been like, oh, there's been some struggles, like, but you're going to have that, right? You're going to have, they came in, and I'd been operating for 5 years. I really felt like I had things locked down. And when we switched, after we pulled the trigger on August 1, we changed to Napa. They came in, they pulled things off the shelf. And I basically felt kind of like I started from square one again. I was that guy
Oh, really?
on the first day, like, because some of the stuff had been moved, and things were not where for like 5 years I've been able to say, oh, well, you need this, it's right here. So
Uh-huh.
that kind of got disoriented me, and it was a new computer system I had to learn. But it's been a great the thing. The main difference I'm experiencing is I was their 17th store they acquired, and
Okay.
so it's a pretty good operation. It's still a family-run
Yeah.
business. Family-run business. It was started here local down in Eldon, Missouri, and I can't stress enough how great they've been. The main thing before for me was, when you own the business, right? Like, and nothing ever comes to you that's easy, right? Like it's always at the end of the day,
Right.
if it was easy, it got solved, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's always like before it was always like, oh man, it's like, and some days you feel like you're handling nothing but problems, right? And which, I love being a problem solver. And, now I have people, we have a district manager, we have things, and just like, and I will say this, they've let me, I mean, they told me, we'll let you just run the store like you've been running it. And, they got a plan for me to do outside sales. They were really, they really liked the key stuff so far. I mean, they just said, run it like you've been running it. And I mean, I have,
Okay.
um, it's been going really good, so and now if I have an issue, it's like, I can call somebody.
Sure. Yeah. Send it up the line a little bit.
So, I mean, that's nice. But I've always had the mindset that I work for myself, even when I'm working for somebody else, right? Like I've always
Okay.
been, I do a good job just because you need to do a good job, so I was in the Army for a long time. I own my own car dealership. I've worked at places. I worked at a bank. Um, it always comes down to how you are. But it is nice, like being a part, and I have more parts and availability on things. I have more resources to solve problems, which that's what the name of this
Mm-hmm.
is. And yeah, it's been really good. Like we're hitting our stride. We're starting to get out there. Like I said, we're getting another person in, and I'm really excited about where things are going to go.
Well, that's cool, man. That's good to hear. And yeah, congratulations on that. That sounds really good. And that was the reason. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on here was, I put out a lot on the podcast, doing mobile, doing my own
Yeah.
thing. And I talked to a lot of people who are doing the same. And so a lot of my discussions and content is biased in that direction of doing your own thing, being an entrepreneur. And I mean, there is definitely a case to be made for just having a job and working for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the right move for a lot of people, right? Entrepreneurship and doing the business owner thing is right for some people, but definitely not all, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. And, I don't talk about it much, like
Yeah.
working for someone, but, you made that transition, from one to another. And I guess, yeah, that's sort of the sort of stuff that I'm curious about, is like the decisions that went into that, what you miss, what you don't miss. And I mean, obviously, like you're saying, like you have to be the resolution to all the problems as a business
Mm-hmm.
owner, right?
Yeah.
It's eventually going to fall on you if nobody else can or is willing to solve it. And you might still be able to reach out for outside help, but it's not, within your
Mm-hmm.
business. Like,
Right.
you are the the tech support and the
Yeah.
HR, and you're trying to solve everything. And so it's a ton of responsibility. You can't turn it off.
Yeah.
um you're going to go home and, for me, probably still do work, or at least think about it, always checking in, thinking about what's
Never
going on
stop.
tomorrow. Where if just employed by somebody, and I can say this because I was for a number of years, hey, I clock out, I'm done until I come back here. I'm not thinking one bit about it.
Still,
um,
I still haven't got that. Still haven't got that. I've always been that way. Like where I don't, it's like I never was that guy. Like, I'm always thinking about it anyway. And like we just went to Colorado, and I was like, I hope everything's going good at the shop. How's things going? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? Um, I still have that. I think the biggest struggle for me, where I struggle is, I was the whole picture, right? My shop was the whole picture. So if I wanted to do something, this is what I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now my shop is a part of a larger organization, right? So there's a big picture, and I'm one dot in that picture, and so I always have to kind of I try to put a lot of thought into, because I think sometimes I'm just used to like, right, like when it's in front of you, you're the most important thing, right? Whereas
Sure.
when you got multiple things, like I imagine they're probably like, "Whoa, calm down, dude. Like, that's not that important, but it's important to me."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I try to put a lot of
I
thought.
got to get that key made for that Silverado.
I need this, or just on things like, we need to solve, or we need to have this, and I could pull the trigger before. I've still got. I mean, I'd say they haven't. I mean, I hope I haven't done anything. I'm still here, so. Uh, but that's kind of the
Ooh,
trouble is there's a great bit, there's a bigger picture than what my store is, and like I got where you fit, like I mean, there's like just because this place needs this radiator right now and I need something to go get it, like, well, calm down. This place needs an engine, this place needs this place needs this, and
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But by and large, yeah, it come down for me. Just I really think it was a really good fit, and I think it was a good deal for me. It was a good deal for them. It was a good deal for Napa. Probably wasn't a good deal for CarQuest, but yeah. Uh, but
uh,
they didn't leave
did
me.
you did the employees at the stores like stay? Did everybody just transfer into Napa, or how did that work?
Everybody stayed. Oddly enough, my one employee, and he's been with me for a long time, he actually left me, went to work for them for a couple years, and then came back. So he kind
Oh,
of, yeah, so he kind of knew, and I was, and he's been really good with it. Everybody's just kind of rolled right along. It was a little frustrating sometimes, like when a lot of the people struggled, same as me. I had to go get some sodas and some lunches here and there to keep everybody, like, keep that morale going, because it's when things have been really easy for you, like, like the simple things, like, it's like, oh, I need this. I'm just got, it's just anything, just like, like Permatex stuff's right over here and you just grab it. Well, now it's not there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this display, and it's like, oh man. So, and then like, and there's a lot of pressure when customers are in front of you and you call or you're trying to find something. The computer system's a little bit different.
yep.
And it's just different the way you look things up. I like it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really used to the other system we had. You drilled down in categories and you drilled down to it, where this one's more like a Google search, and it's taken us all a little bit of time to, learn the system and learn that. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like this last month we're really kind of back, or I kind of feel really confident.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, the growing pains anytime you add something or make a change or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I've been going through that. My new key machine it's it's nice. It works great, but I'm having to kind of learn everything over again because it's a totally different brand.
What's that? I
And
heard you talking about that. Which one did you get?
I got the Triton.
Okay, I've been looking at those.
And so it's a really nice tool, but there's just little quirks to it that are different than the XOR stuff. And certain things it will do, certain things it does differently, and so you just have to fumble your way through it. But that's exactly what it is. It's like this key would have taken me 10 minutes before. Now I'm here for a half hour
Yeah,
kind of screwing around figuring all this stuff out. But that, yeah, it's like you do that a few times and then you're back up to speed to where you were. But it's
yep.
always that period of time when you're transitioning kind of sucks.
That's,
um
that's exactly right. I call it muscle, that muscle memory on what you do.
yeah, for me, a lot of the part that I like owning my own thing, running the show, is being able to call the shots on stuff. And that goes across a lot of things, like whether or not I want to take on a job, um, how much work we want to take on in a day, like what time are we done? What's our last job of the day? Um, saying yes or saying no to certain things,
Mm-hmm.
um, all that stuff. Even when it comes down to what tool are we going to buy or what jobs are we going to pursue more, all this stuff. I really do like being able to call those shots. And I think that was one of the biggest hangups I had of working for somebody else, especially in a
Yeah.
shop. Because you very often, at least I very often did not have a say in that sort of thing. You know, it's whatever they decided to take in the door whenever they decided to take it. You know, that's what you're going to be working on. And yeah, there was some room for you to, you know, plead your case of,
Yeah.
hey, I don't want to do this. But at the end of the day, it's what they would take in. You know, it's that intermittent misfire that only happens once a week. You
Yeah.
know, or this big rusty, 1-ton van that they want you to do breaks all the way around on. It's just like, I mean, yeah, okay, it's work, right? Shouldn't complain, but I
Yeah.
really do like the ability to just say, nah, I'm good. We'll pass on that one.
You don't do any
Um,
breaks anymore.
Hell no, I don't do any brakes at all. Well, I should. I put brake pads on my van, so I guess I'm lying there. But
Right?
um, I don't do tires. I have somebody else do the tires for me. I never do another tire again. That was
Yeah.
the stuff we get, right? It's slow, and like if I'm talking about Firestone, you get the oil changes, and then you get the snow tire changeover. That was the absolute worst. Is the snow tire changeover. We get those, and I think you got paid less than a normal set of tires, which wasn't even that much to begin with. You got like 6/10 for a set of tires, and you got less for a snow tire changeover, even though you're doing the same thing. And ugh, it was awful.
Mhm.
Anyways, don't miss any of that stuff.
Like, is anybody like, so like with diagnosing, like, I do love business, like, all of it's like, I love running my own business, but I'm still a part of running it. And,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, if it wasn't such a good, like, I just got a really good feeling and, just kind of hit it off. Like, I got the same, and I was able to jump on board with them and hopefully help them grow this and expand this and help their organization. So that's, like I said, I think, I kind of got to watch, like making sure that, also for me, I think about things now, like in this last couple months, like, it's tough when you have employees. Like I make the joke all the
Mm-hmm.
time, right? Like I went and got a college degree in business, right? But I think I should have took. I say all the time, I was like, I should have took gymnastics and psychology. I majored in business. Should have took gymnastics and psychology because I feel like I'm always jumping through my ass and talking people off ledges. Like that's my job. Like, and it's like at the office and at the shops. It's like whoa, man. So everything's always and the business side of this. Like I watched I think that was the thing that shocks me the most, right? So like I came into this, I retired, opened up a parts store. I'd always worked on my own cars. I'd had a little a D tag and had a car dealership while I was going to put myself through college. And I ordered a lot of parts. I did a lot of things. I thought like, I know this, but it was an eye opener. Like it's different. Like it's there's a lot more involved, and just like I see, what really gets me is like the mechanic world. What I see the mechanics have to do, like I'm walking into the shops every day. I do enjoy it. That's like one of my funnest part of the job is being out there and being in the shops and talking with them. And but the recognition, like the diagnostic stuff that I see you guys do, is like, guarantee you, lawyers and doctors, you guys, the stuff you're pulling off, like I see people do, it's like and you don't get paid like them. And you should. I mean, the amount of work and research and studying that I see people doing and stuff pulling off, it's just like it's amazing, And mechanics,
Yeah.
they don't get the recognition you deserve for what happens, because it is so funny. I saw a shop the other day, like they pulled off like uh it was like a TIPA module, and they figured out there was comms going in, not comms going out, and they'd done all this work, and in the end, I think the customer was mad at them, and it was like and it was the module wasn't working. It was something crazy about the way it was reading, and I was like, the way they broke it down, and actually, but it took 2 days longer than it took a day and a half, I think. And the customer,
Okay.
and just you see that, and you're like, do they even understand what they just did to pull that off? And I
Right.
guarantee they didn't get as much diag time as it took,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so like that does blow me away with. I've always been super impressed with that with the shops, like what it takes to diagnose these vehicles today. It's huh, it's no easy task, as you know.
Right. And I think that's what's driven so many people to start doing, this type of thing that I'm doing on their own, is because whether it's recognition or compensation or combination, it's not there, in the shops, or it hasn't been there in the shops. And there's obvious exceptions and people doing really good stuff, but as a whole, it's very much so true, is that
Yeah,
the compensation for the people who are doing really, really good stuff wasn't there. So they've gone out on their own. And so now, you rewind 15 years ago, and there was some mobile guys, but it was very few. There was nowhere near the amount that there is now, but that's exactly it, is what's required to do the part of the job that we do. It's created this need
yeah,
for people to do it, and it just didn't work inside of the shop systems that existed. And
right. Because you could come in, because like why doesn't the model work in a shop that repairs? That because you see it so much, and it's just what you do it a lot, so you're quick with it, right? So you can knock out more than they can. Like,
yeah, and it's just the flat rate pay scale, didn't work. It works great for parts hanging and repair work, but not so much for diagnostic. And
yeah,
I think there was definitely a time, I mean, I know there was when I was a tech, where you could be great at parts hanging and just okay enough to get by on the diagnostic, and even use the parts hanging ability to your advantage, because you can swap out 3 or 4 components real quick to figure out what it is,
yeah,
um and so you didn't need that to be successful, unless that's really what you were focusing on. Like, bring me all your diagnostic work, I want to do all of it. If you're just a repair shop, you could get by, but it just more and more and more, if you have a repair shop, you got to have somebody be able to tackle that stuff, whether
yeah.
it's inside or outside of your shop. And the model of pay just didn't keep up with what was required to get the whole vehicle done. But I mean, of course, I'm biased because I do it, but I think the idea of specialization in the different areas
Right.
it makes total sense, right? The whole, you don't have a house repairman, you have a plumber, electrician, an
Right.
HVAC, a roofer, a painter, blah blah blah, right? Same idea with the car. It's just the car is mobile, so you bring it to a shop. But hey, having somebody come in to do a specialized service for it, I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as a good move by another business owner, right? And so you'll have the shop where maybe they shouldn't be in business
Yeah.
based on the skill level that you're coming in to help. But then you have the opposite too. You have these guys who are very smart. They just have realized, hey, I have guys with X skill sets that can hang parts and bust out work. And that's what they're best at, or that's what they're most suited to. That's what they want to do. Let's keep them doing that. And then we'll call Sean in to tell them, what part to get at it. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of shops I go to. It's not that they can't, it's that efficiency wise and how they have their structure set up, it makes more sense for them to throw parts at it and to pay me to tell them what part to
Oh,
throw at it. And
that's
so they're utilizing that skill set to increase their productivity, and even to take on jobs that they wouldn't have otherwise, right? Like, they can update that Chrysler infotainment system now, say, sure, yeah, bring it in, we'll get it programmed, and not even have to think twice about it. They don't have to check their subscriptions, they don't have to update their this or their that, they're just,
smart
yep, we'll
shops.
take it. And then they call somebody who can, and they make it happen. But
So, and I see like that's one thing. Like I've thought about that. Like so, if you had a shop, like you said, your moneymaker is on your hanging parts, right? And doing those brake jobs, doing the oil, not probably not the oil changes. I see them. Everybody always tells me that the oil changes are not profitable, but you know, I would look at it too like that because am I going to spend 4 hours or 5 hours like working this car? Because in the end, on that one truck, we did call a guy that we knew that was mobile. He's the one that saved my bacon on that key fob I was telling you, or that key that didn't start.
okay,
I took it down. He helped me rework it with a hot air gun, and I called him up there, and because the shop can get back to doing the stuff that's profitable, and everybody in this day and age, everyone's shorthanded. So to have one of your people doing that, you can have them doing those money jobs and knocking that out. So it makes total sense.
mm-hmm.
I get it. It just
Yeah.
but I do say I'm in awe of some of the stuff I see, like I don't even know the best word for it, but how just what it takes to fix a car is just crazy these days.
Yep. And like you mentioned, the average person driving a car has no idea. I actually, it wasn't even that long ago. I was out over the course of a weekend, just out meeting new people, having fun, events or whatever. And of course, the topic is, what do you do for a living? Okay. And I have found explaining what I do to people, they're like all confused about it. Like the question I'll get is like, oh, the shop just can't do that stuff. I'm like, no. and and then the other thing was, and I got this 3 times in a weekend. They're like, oh, I thought you just plugged in the computer and it told you what was wrong.
No.
And I'm like, well, not exactly.
Right.
uh, and so, yeah, the average person, and hey, I don't necessarily think that they should have to, but the average person just doesn't understand what goes into
I didn't, and I worked.
figuring out repairing these.
5 years ago when I opened this up, I thought, okay, I work on my own car. I do a lot of this stuff. I had my dealership, and I had a guy that worked for me. He wasn't even he was barely a parts changer, but he would do like I would send him over to get stuff. I outsourced all my mechanic work when I had my car lot. But just knowing, I was always calling and doing, and I really thought I knew it. But man, what it takes to fix a car, and also like I don't think as a business you'd have to be a really high level, like all the subscriptions for each of the different ones and everything you need to do. It just makes so much sense to just have one person because, unless you were seeing all these things all the time, it just would not make sense to me. I mean, I couldn't see as like paying for that subscription or and then see it 3 times a year or something. Yeah.
You'd have to specialize on one or a few brands, which again kind of goes back to what I'm saying is the specialization part of it really makes sense to zero in on something specific and be really good at that part, and then not have to worry about the entire car because it's too much. Unless you have a shop set up well enough and a customer base right where you can have a person for each area of the car, but I don't know. There's probably models out there like that.
Maybe in the bigger cities, big cities.
Well, and even like Fonslow's shop, he's down in Red Wing, a couple hours south of me, and they kind of have that going where their shop will take care of it all, from keys to ADAS, diag programming, whatever. And Matt does a lot of the technical stuff, and then they have people for the repair side of things. But that's not an easy thing to replicate, right? That's not just like, poof, I'm going to do it. That's definitely outside of the norm, but that goes back to, being the business owner and making those types of decisions, right? Like, what type of work are we going to take on? When am I going to pay somebody else to do this for me? And you've got to like weigh all those decisions and try to figure it out on the, the balance sheet of what's, going to make sense for the business. And that's a big responsibility.
Huge. Just like when I took on doing keys, it was kind of by accident. I just kept having people walk through the door of my parts store and ask me, do you make keys? And then, I was like, man, how many times I gotta get asked this? And so then we had those like doormen where you could buy them off the shelf and program them. And every time I'd start every time I'd sell one of those, I would end up out in the parking lot trying to figure it out because they're just going to return it with the package all tore apart.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
then I started researching keys, and then the way I kind of got that brain where, I like to figure things out. And then that's how I happened across your podcast. But I was researching keys, and I saw this one that said key episode. And I was like, what? So I listened to it. And then I got to listen to your podcast. And I tell people all the time, I kind of leaped before I looked. I went and bought all the equipment. I was like, oh man, now I got to, I started doing the math on it. I started breaking it down. Like, okay, so I got to sell so many keys to make this profitable. I think
yeah,
I need to do at least, like, I had it down to like 39 with the programming fee. I'm like that. Like, I got an Excel sheet. I break it down, like each of these keys, so much of this goes to pay back this, and
yeah.
then, but man, it just takes you over because, well, this does this, then you got to have this, and you got to have this,
Yep.
you
And then
know?
you run into something I can't do this. I got to buy this $1,000 tool to do this one job. Um,
Yeah. And I'm like, why can't I talk to this Dodge? This newer Dodge. Do you have auto-authy? Do I have auto what?
yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I do now.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it never ends. There's always something. And I try to do that. Like, yeah, what's my ROI on this? And sometimes it's tough, that's been a tough call to make, is like, do I get this tool or software or whatever just to be
Right.
able to say yes? And I'm not concerned about, am I going to make my money back on it right away or if ever? Or is that something that I just say no to because it doesn't make
Right.
sense? And that's a tough one. Like, do you lose that customer? Because you might, if that's the first time they call you, or that's what they really were expecting to get out of your services, and you like, nah, we can't do that, or we don't do those, and then they don't call you, and then had they would have turned into an awesome customer with a ton of work.
Right.
That's usually my thought when I'm trying to weigh the decision. But then at the same time, if my key machine costs me $4,000 or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big chunk of change. Like, I got to make sure. Well, I should say this, actually, my ADAS stuff right now is kind of that for me. It's like, I spent a lot of money on my ADAS kit. It's a lot
Which
of money
one?
for me.
You got the top
And
down? The top down ADOS?
I did. Yeah. I got the mobile top down one. And I have to make sure that I'm making a focused effort to try to get those jobs, because they don't just walk in the door for me. It's something where I've had to really kind of push and get out there and talk to people and get some more of these
Are
jobs,
you
because
are you getting it? Are you starting to see it?
yeah, it's slow. It's not something that exploded quite like the module programming or even like keys. I was kind of looking, we're almost to the end of the year. I was looking at totals of stuff, and keys have done really well this year. But all that stuff grew pretty organically, where the
Yeah.
ADAS stuff, I've really had to make an effort to push it, and it hasn't grown quite as quickly as I like. I think part of it is there's some bigger companies local to me that have already established themselves pretty well, and so that's been a limitation. But again, it's like one of those things where you have to weigh the decision as a business owner and take on that responsibility of, do I want to pursue this? And then, okay, if I pursue this and it turns out to be a bust, that's on me. And you're responsible. Here's my thing too, is like, at first it was just me, right? I was
Huh?
just on my own, and if I fail, it's on me. Well, now I got a
Right.
couple employees.
Yeah, that's when you're wearing the hat, right? Like,
Yeah, and so
yeah,
now you are responsible for their success as well.
right?
um
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, they need their paycheck, and you've got
Yeah,
to come
right,
through.
right.
Yeah.
And you want the business to do well so you can continue to employ them and, see them do better. Like, I want this,
Mhm.
I want to see them both make more money next year than they did this year. Okay, well, that involves the business being better, right? So that's a responsibility. Obviously, we all share, but to be
Mhm.
the lead on that, hey, that's me. And I don't have, somebody else to call to do that for me. Like, I've got to figure that out. Sean's got to take that on. And I guess the reason I say that is just for somebody to think about, if you're like, oh, I hate this job, I hate working, for somebody, whatever, I want to go out on my own. Well, that's the sort of thing that changes for you. Is like, wow, you got these big weights on your shoulder every day to make sure that, hey, this works out well. And hopefully you can get the right team around you, and that makes it so much
Exactly.
easier. By the
Oh,
sounds of it, you probably had something similar or have something similar
I,
with the team around you.
I did. It's always, you're always building a team and the people. Man, I know when I first opened the first year, I didn't even have myself on a salary, right? And, uh, when people are like, how'd you make, I don't know. I have this thing, like, I was, and you talked to me before. I was always, I have a real entrepreneur heart, right? I
Mm-hmm.
love that. And, I was telling you, like, hey, a ship is safe in harbor. Remember I told you that a ship is safe in harbor, but it's designed to sail, right?
Yeah.
Like go for it. And, you know, it's just, there was times that first year, I know that my employees made more than me. It happened a lot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But these, it starts building, it starts building. Things get a little easier. You start doing, and the next thing you know, we turned into an S corp, and me and my wife both
Okay.
had paychecks, and kind of had it lined out. But I know, yeah, there's some, business starting a business is rough. It really
Yep.
is. It's
Yep.
tough,
It,
and no
well, it's going
matter.
to cost you way more than you think it will. You can sit down with a pen and paper and just say, well, I'll have this expense, not to buy this, not to pay for this. And then, okay, well, then there's insurance. And then
Yeah,
there's taxes of every kind you can think of. And oh, wait, when you have all the taxes, there's another tax that you've got to pay on something else. Um,
and
but
it's
then,
always it's like when I describe it as like when you're playing checkers and you didn't see that, and they jump you, and you're like, "What the hell?" Like you didn't see, like that happens all the time.
yeah, yeah, right.
That's why I always think of things like, "Oh man, I didn't see that double jump." I got hit when COVID was raging and inflation went up. Uh, I had my parts increased in value, right? So like the price of parts went up, right? So
Okay.
typically in a normal year, like who cares? But they went up so much that the value of my inventory went up that it ended up causing me about a $6,000 tax liability. And
Oh, geez.
right, because my assets went up. I did not
Okay.
see that coming. Right, I did not see that coming. So then I got hit with, hey, you owe $6,000 on because of this. And I'm like, that's not money I cash flowed. I didn't cash flow that, right?
Right. All that
I
stuff
didn't
was already
earn
sitting on
that.
your shelf. Yeah.
There's $6,000 that I got to come up with to hand over that I didn't think about, right? There's always that, but I was ready for it next year. It's like we got to do those things. So then, we do our inventory always in December. So this last year, what we did was we did a build where what you do is we called it in CarQuest, they called it a spin, and you can bunch of inventory that's sitting there. Like I always in the parts business, you look at what's sitting there on your shelf, right? And I haven't sold this in 3 years. It needs to go and put money in something else that's going to sell, right?
Okay.
So what I did was went through. My wife's amazing. She helped me out, and like we ran a report, and I said X amount hadn't sold. It's good to go back. We pushed it back, and then after January, rebought, like replaced that. We just did it right there at the end. So it worked out. So then we didn't get hit with that, and, talking to my accountant, I was like, you didn't see this? Like, we didn't know. Like, never had a year where prices increased like they just did, never had
Right.
that. And you just
Well,
don't see that.
that's a great example because I would have never have guessed that was even a thing to consider if I was going to be opening up a parts shop. I didn't know that they
Yeah.
valuated the parts that you have sitting there and then they tax you on it if they go up. I mean,
Yeah.
the government is your business partner as
Oh,
long as you're doing well. And then
no,
as soon
they're
as
there. Whether there's a lot of times like you look at your bottom line, like and ran really good books. I've always been good about that. And we and you look at the end of the month, and it's like, it says you made all this money. You owe us. It's like, what? Well, it's not here. Well, it's setting in parts. It's setting in Donnie's new key machine, and this thing we bought, and you know.
yeah, yeah.
So you got to like, what? What? I didn't make this. Are you kidding me? And, oh yeah, you made
Yep,
it.
yep. Yeah, I'm looking at end of year stuff, and my van it's almost to 300,000, and I was like, I'm gonna get it to 300,000, and then it's realistically probably time for a new van for me,
Your
but
transit.
financially it's a good time too, because then I, like, okay, end of the year, let's get a new van and put that on, so it helps with the taxes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
um Another area where I hire a specialist, because I need
Yeah.
advice when it comes to that tax stuff. So I have a tax guy. Oh, you got to pay that. You got to pay your accountant fees, and that's totally worth it. But just like, yeah, another expense like that. Whereas an employee, you don't, you don't. I mean, you could have a tax person individually, but um,
And that's what, because every month we were going through, you know, every month I sat down, I was going through, or look, looking at the financials every month, and I would go over it with our accountant lady, and every month, hey, you're doing great, da da da, you're not, this work. And it always gives you got to look at those things. You've got That's one thing I always tell a friend of mine. He's getting ready to retire, and he's got a business plan. So he calls me a lot, and I told him, I was like, here's my thing. I love business, right? I love doing a business. Honestly, it just, as a businessman, it was a good deal, and it was the best move for both organizations, right? I really feel like, and I feel like it was the best move, and we're both really stronger together, right? It was a great move as a business. Um, but I told my friend, I said, you know what it's like? It's like being an MMA match, except for the fight didn't start in the ring with your opponent. You start in the locker room when you start thinking about opening your business, and then you got the people
mm-hmm.
telling yourself like, "Oh, I got to get this, I got that, or that ain't gonna work," and self doubt. Or like me, like you go to set up and you got to get your building, it's got to pass code, and you got to do these
Yeah,
things, and like you feel like you're just fighting your butt off just to make it to the ring to start fighting. That's what it's like to own a business, right? It's
yeah,
like
yeah. There's a lot of build up time to, like, you have to will it into existence, and that's a tough period of time. And if you don't really love what you're doing, I don't know how I would have made it through the
mm.
the beginning stages of where I was at, right? Like, to get to the point of having enough work and having
Yeah,
a system in place to hire somebody, that took a really long time and a ton of work to get there.
yeah,
And that is definitely something to consider for somebody who's thinking, oh, I want to do this. Is like, the beginning stages are not going to be easy. It's going to
they
be
are
a
not.
ton of unpaid effort to yourself. I mean, in the long run, but like in the short term, you're not going to be seeing all the returns for all the work that you're putting in.
Mm.
And hopefully it works. Like, sometimes it doesn't work out, and then
No.
all that work you're not getting paid
Well,
for. So
that
um
first year and a half, I think back now, like, I was pretty headstrong. I read a lot of the business stuff. I know, I'm always like going, but I'll tell you, looking back now, a few things went just the wrong way. I don't know if I'd have made it. I don't
yep.
know. Like at the time, I didn't see it that way. I was like, oh no, there's just no way this is not going to make it. Like, I have my vision. It's going to work. And, it does. And, it does. It's tough, man. Owning a business is tough. You got to fight for your business. You got to you got to
Yeah.
fight to get paid.
Yeah. Oh,
Sometimes,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
by and large, I've been really good with that hash. But it's always, I had it when I had my car a lot. It's like always. It's like, just like in this
There's
business.
always somebody that you got to hound to get
Mhm.
that payment, for sure. Yeah, we experience that same thing. There's I have a customer who will not pay the bill until they need something else from me, and
Yeah.
we're on them because of this, because we recognize the pattern. But it's like, this bill goes unpaid, unpaid, unpaid. We send reminders, call them, whatever, and
Hmm.
then it'll get paid, and we can see it come through on our QuickBooks. It's like 10 minutes later, they're calling us because they want something fixed. I'm like, come on, man.
I know, right? It just makes you like, God, am I gonna have to put you on like you pay me?
Right,
Shouldn't
right.
be this
I
way.
mean, yeah, you gotta uh, make those, again, that's a call as a business owner that you got to make. It's like, oh, how am I going to handle this? When am I going to
Yeah.
stop working with somebody? That's another thing that I've had to do, is a couple shops
Oh,
just like, sorry, hey, this doesn't work. I am saying no to your business. That was kind of a tough thing for me, but
it
you've
is.
you've got to make that decision again, because that's okay. This is what's best for
Yeah.
all
Well,
parties involved.
that's what's rough. Like, like sometimes when my guys would have, it's like, oh, I can sell these parts. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not going to pay for them. So I'm not, no, don't send those. Um, it's like, those sales mean nothing if you don't collect on them,
Yeah.
or, it's actually worse because you know what you put, for us, it was, you put gas and effort for like you spend an hour or two out there messing with something, where you could have been doing something profitable. And, and it's hard to say no to a sale. It really is. It's hard to say no to a sale, but that's the best thing to do sometimes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
especially when it comes to, at the end of the day, you always hear it. It's a business. It's got to make money, and everybody's in business. And I had that the first year. I struggled with that too. Like, I'd have some, some. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, you think you have a big parts bill. Like people always, oh, the parts bill, I owe you. And it's like, you think you have a big parts bill? Try getting an $80,000 one or a $90,000 or $100,000 bill at the end of the month.
Holy cow.
Yeah, yeah. And uh, sometimes people don't. It's like it's a big deal when they don't pay you right off. It's like how many of those people can you float? I think I had a really good. I met a guy. He'd been in the parts business for a long time. We were on one of our like a. They had us at one of the resorts, and we were learning about stuff, and we were taking a profitability in your store class. And he's been doing it for a long time. And I talk to him still today. I call him all the time, and he told me that he's like, what the biggest mistake business owners make, especially in the parts business? It's like $3,000 is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. He goes, your
Mm-hmm.
parts guys will push that out there, and they'll think, oh, I'll do that, and we'll carry it for 90, 120 days. But that's a lot of money, and I got to think about it because if you get 3 or 4 accounts like that, that's
Yep.
tough,
Yep.
and you've got to keep control of that. And that's one of the things, unfortunately now that's kind of one of the big things now. I don't deal with that. I still try to I want to make sure just because, and that's where I struggle also is I don't know what, that's not really in my job lane, but on the other hand, I kind of feel responsible. I want to make sure they get taken care of, so,
Right.
you know,
But it's
yeah,
nice not to have to worry about that in
yeah,
regards to your paycheck at the end of the month.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Cause that's what I always tell people all the time. Like, like when my parts bill comes due, I can't say like, get you next month. I can't.
Right.
That's my lifeline. I had to have that. So, and there was shops. It is business. Part of business is, you have to kind of look at that and assess it. I had one shop that did, they got behind and I was just starting out and I let it go way too long because I really wasn't confident enough into going in there and saying like, I need my money. It's a hard thing to do,
Hmm.
right? It shouldn't be, but it's a hard thing to do. Like I need my
Yeah.
money. And same guy, after I talked to him, like that's when I was having that discussion, and he spun me up on. He's like, "Hey, they need their money from the customer. They get their money from the customer. They need to give it to you. That's just the way this thing rolls." And that's when you just gotta, if you gotta keep hounding them. And you know what? I went and talked to him, and honestly, it was really good for me because it broke my fear of that. I went and had a discussion. It was something, yeah, we're having this right here, but we got this in place, and they came through. And you know what? I've never had a
Okay.
problem with them. Never had a problem with them since. It was just kind of honestly, if I'd have went and said something earlier, it'd probably gotten taken care of earlier. And so I'm like,
Sure.
I kind of felt bad. Like, why didn't I bring this up to? Like, how did it get this bad? You let it go this bad? And I'm like, oh, I did, didn't
Right.
I? I was like, oh, I kind of figured.
Yeah. It's I've been lucky there. Like you say though, like I haven't had one individual customer that's been really bad about paying. Like just there's like the one I mentioned, but they do add up, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, all of a sudden I got 10, 15 of these unpaid bills. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that is a decent chunk of change. And so now you got to sort through and call all these different people. But if you can, like you say, if you set something up, I have like Firestone Tires Plus. They take like 30, 40 days to pay, but they always pay. So I just got to
Exactly.
wait for it.
But and
Yeah.
and there's a difference when that's the deal. Like you're waiting on that money, you can plan
You
for
can
it.
plan it. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's a tough. That's what business is. It's fun. It's exciting. It's stressful. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy, but it's
Yeah.
yeah. Owning your own business is a different deal. It really is. And Like I said, if you'd have talked to me, like I said, a few months ago, I'd have said, no way. This just turned out. I mean, sometimes as a business person, you look at it and you're like, that's a great offer. You know,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, it's a good offer. And I was also really, for me, I wanted to be a part of their team. Uh, they're doing some exciting stuff. I feel it's they're growing. They want to grow, and yeah, like I said, it's nice to actually have other people. I've met some people that, man, in this business, knowledge is everything, and just some really smart people that have been doing it a long time. And it's nice to say, hey, have you seen this? Yeah, I've seen this, and that's because of this. Oh yeah, nice, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have like I said, yeah, I'm really excited. Like I said, I would never have guessed I'd been there. Like I just, from a random bump in at Vision, to now.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, it's crazy how stuff works out. Same thing for me. If you would have rewound 5 years ago, there's no way I would have been able to tell you exactly what I'd be doing in the way that I'd be doing it. And then, oh yeah, you'd quit teaching to run your own mobile business and have 2 employees and be like, whatever, no way. Um, but
Was it stressful
yeah.
when you? I know what it was. I know it was because I know the first time I hired, like I hired somebody right out the gate, and then I couldn't get everything done that I needed to get done. But I'm looking at the books, and the books don't really say I can hire somebody. But and I remember making that call, like, well, the first one I kind of cheated. My wife, I got in there and I was like, invoicing and doing all this stuff. That's a whole other one person job. And I
Yep.
was just going to try to do that all myself, and I couldn't. So my wife's really good at that stuff. So I basically, she kind of hinted around she wanted to come into work. And I was like, she, wanted to be a part of it. And I'm like, yeah, here you are. Now, she's 50-50 owner on the business with me. She was. And, she came to work with me every day, and we made it happen. She took care of the back end and all that financing and all, and the statements and things like that. And she's really good at that. And she also handled a lot of the inventory stuff. And I did the sales and the counter and that. So I kind of cheated on that one because I could never hire what I got because I wasn't paying her
Sure.
much. I wasn't paying her
Yeah.
much. We took a huge pay cut them first couple of years. Uh, but then it got to where it's like, man, yeah, I needed one more. I needed somebody else to be able to grow. And I remember we were talking about it. I was looking at it, I was like, we can't afford that. We can't afford it. And, we just finally just said, sometimes you got to go backwards to go forwards. You got to go
Mm-hmm.
back, and then it works. And, it just took a leap of faith, got it, boom, honestly. And then now it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, we got to have
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to live without it. And
Mhm.
yeah, same thing for me. Well, first, I've heard of a lot of the guys who do mobile that I know doing the same thing you did, where they get their wives involved for answering the phone, invoicing, whatever. So
Yeah.
you're not alone there. But yeah, when I first hired my first guy to run the second van, um, I'd gotten to the point where I was overwhelmed with work. And so I knew I needed to do something, whether it was start turning stuff away or jack up my prices enough to drive some people off, or I decided to
Yeah.
hire somebody. But that first couple months, like you say, the expenses of it like didn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And so there was a rough period where I'm just like, man, this is costing me a lot for what I'm getting out of it. Well, you got to be willing to take the hit there and be prepared
Hmm.
for that financially to get through to the other side. And now we're doing way more than we ever
Yeah.
did before. And I couldn't see doing this, without him. And then we added a third guy, and that was even tougher financially because he wasn't out fixing cars,
Yeah. He's not
right?
generating
He's
revenue, right?
not directly, right?
But
And
you're
so,
creating more revenue because you're out there more.
yep, right. We can focus on what we're good at, and then he can make us more productive in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
Everybody, and they've given him a bunch of roles with like marketing and things like that too that are helping. But again, same thing. Like, it takes a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I sometimes you put the need in front of yourself and you just put it into place, and then you make it happen, right? Like
Yep.
it forces you to be able to afford it because, well, it's here. I made the decision that it's needed for this business or it's beneficial to this business.
Yeah.
I'm now going to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You find a way to not only make it affordable, but make it profitable. And then we're like, okay, well, this was an awesome decision. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah.
But it's tough. Like there's that period, like you got to make the right decision. You got to get the right person. You got to have everything in place. And then there's still a really tough period before it's profitable to you.
Although sometimes she's as bad as me because she's in the parts business too. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
so, she'll talk too, and then but she does like to. We do like to kind of quiet at home. And
my girlfriend's eyes glaze over when I start talking about this stuff. So
it's awesome. Now, when it comes to like actually working and fixing on cars, my wife's like, she's out. Like she can tell you anything, but she can tell you where something goes for it, like and how it's cataloged and where it's back there. Like that's like, I'm like me. That's my least concern. Until I'm running around there like an idiot trying to find it. Like, where the hell is this? Well, man, I really do appreciate you having me on again. And
yeah, same here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you too.
That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for Donnie for joining me on the show today. Really appreciate it. Also want to say thank you to everybody out there listening and offering feedback on the show. Really appreciate that too. But with that out of the way, let's all get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.
Yeah.